I didn't want to go to Camp Hollow Pine. Not because I hated the outdoors or because I was some kind of wimp. I'd done camps before: rain, bugs, hiking until your knees buckled. I could handle all that. But Hollow Pine felt different. Even the name made my stomach twist. Hollow. Like something empty but waiting to be filled. My older brother Josh had been a counselor there 3 years ago. He never talked about it, not once. Just shook his head when I brought it up. And when he found out I was registered to go that summer, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you hear a whistle after lights out one that's not from a counselor, don't answer it." I laughed. He didn't. He just walked out of the room and never mentioned it again. I was 15 that summer. My cabin was near the edge of the forest, separated from the others by a thin gravel path. Our counselor, Nate, was chill, a college kid who told us ghost stories around the fire and let us sneak Pop-Tarts after taps. There were 5 other guys in my cabin, and for the first few nights, it was the usual flashlight tag, dumb pranks, late-night fart wars. But on the 4th night, the air shifted. Even the trees were still. The crickets stopped. And around midnight, I heard it. One long, piercing whistle. Not the kind counselors used. This was breathy, wet, like it came from someone's mouth instead of a metal whistle. Everyone else was asleep. I sat up in my bunk, heart suddenly racing. It came again, this time closer, like someone was standing right outside our cabin door. Wee-oo. Drawn out, too long. I looked to Nate's bunk, empty. I slipped out from under the blanket and crossed to the door, pressed my ear to the wood. No footsteps, no crunch of gravel, just the whistle, again, louder, as if it were right in front of me now. But no one knocked. No one called out. The only thing I could hear was breathing. Not mine, someone else's. On the other side, and then the sound moved. Not away. Up, onto the cabin roof. I didn't move. Couldn't. The sound of breathing above me was rhythmic. Shallow, like someone crouched low and trying not to be heard. Then the wooden roof creaked, not from the wind, not from an animal. Too heavy, too human. I backed away slowly and looked around the cabin. Everyone else was asleep. No one stirred. Where the hell was Nate? The whistle came again, directly overhead this time, long and uneven, as if whoever was doing it was struggling to exhale. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it at the ceiling. Silence, then tap, 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 3 deliberate knocks from the roof. I snapped off the light. That's when I heard Nate's voice, but not from outside. It came from the closet. Soft, hoarse, panicked. "Help! Don't open the door. Please, he's still here." I froze. What? I stepped closer to the small supply closet across from the bunks, my heart hammering against my ribs. Inside, nothing but spare sleeping bags and a busted first aid kit. Except now, from behind it all, whispers. I opened the door slowly. At the bottom, curled in a ball behind the bedding, was Nate, his eyes wide, blood on his shoulder. I dropped to my knees. What the hell happened? He grabbed my arm hard and whispered, "It looks like people, but it's not." Another whistle, this time right outside the window. It wasn't just one tone, there were 2. One long, one short, back and forth, communicating. And that's when I noticed something outside. Not a shadow, not a person, a figure crawling. Its back was arched wrong, its limbs too long. It scuttled from one tree to the next, like a spider trying to mimic a human. The whistle came again, but now it was answered by a third from deeper in the woods. Nate was trembling. I tried to whisper, ask what he meant, but he just kept muttering, "Don't move, don't move, don't move." Outside, the whistling grew faster, now bouncing back and forth between 3 directions. It was coordinated. They were closing in. I peeked through the crack in the window. One was directly outside. I saw its face this time, or what should have been a face. Pale skin stretched too tight. No lips, just black gaps where eyes should be. Its mouth was open, unnaturally wide, like the jaw had unhinged, and it was breathing in, not out, to whistle. I backed away slowly, but the floor creaked beneath me. The creature stopped, turned, looked directly at me. Even though it had no eyes, I knew it could see. It let out one short whistle. Behind me, something responded from above the closet. I looked up. Another one was inside, pressed flat against the ceiling like a lizard, its limbs bent at wrong angles, its body hugging the wood in impossible ways. I screamed. Nate lunged forward, grabbing the flashlight from me and blinding it with a sudden beam. The thing screeched a high, rattling noise and dropped from the ceiling like a sack of wet meat. We didn't wait. We threw open the cabin door and ran into the night. The woods were pitch black. The air tasted metallic. The whistling followed us, louder, closer now clearly, from 4 directions. We ran blindly through the trees until Nate suddenly pulled me behind a fallen log and clamped a hand over my mouth. Through the leaves, I saw 2 of them, walking, upright now, wearing scout uniforms, identical to mine, their heads tilted too far, necks twitching, whistling as they searched. And then they stopped. One of them raised its hand and tapped the whistle hanging from its neck. I swear I saw my own name scratched into the metal. We stayed under that log until the whistle stopped. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. At some point, the forest just went still. No footsteps, no breath, no sound at all. Eventually, Nate nudged me, barely able to whisper. We run, straight, no matter what. And we did. Through trees, through darkness, through branches that clawed at our clothes and skin. No flashlights, just instinct and adrenaline. I don't remember seeing the edge of the camp. I only remember the floodlight of the mess hall hitting my face like a spotlight and then a dozen staff running toward us. They found us collapsed near the fire pit. Scraped, bruised, bleeding. They asked what happened. We both said we got lost. That a bear attacked us. Some story that sounded half logical. Nate was pulled aside. I never saw him again. They called my parents. I went home early, but I still hear it, the whistle. Usually just one, soft, long, faint, somewhere outside my window. Other nights, there are 2. Once, I heard 3. And last week, July 13th, I found something in my mailbox. An envelope. Inside, a whistle. Not one of those cheap plastic ones. The metal was old, worn, cold to the touch, and scratched onto the side. Who answered first? Camp Winoka wasn't the kind of place you'd expect anything dark to happen. It had a big lake, paddle boats, campfire sing-alongs, and counselors who wore face paint on the first day to scare away homesickness. It was a cartoon come to life. For most kids, it was perfect, but not for me, because something happened to my older cousin there in 2010. She didn't come back the same. She stopped speaking for a while, and when she finally did, she only said one thing for weeks. Don't go near Tent 6. I was 9 when she came home that way. I never understood it. Now, I was 16. It had been years, and my parents had just laughed it off as a phase or too much ghost stories. So when I got assigned to Camp Winoka for our school's leadership retreat, I tried to forget what she said. We arrived on a warm Thursday in late July. It was humid and bright. The counselors were peppy, the cabins were split by gender, and the old camping area from the original Winoka site, now reserved for tent night, was scheduled for Saturday. And wouldn't you know it, I was assigned to Tent 6. It didn't hit me until I was filling out my name tag and saw the red marker line, Tent 6, B Group. I asked one of the counselors if I could switch. She blinked. No one's in Tent 6, she said. We don't use it anymore. But the assignment list said otherwise. I showed her. Her face paled for a second, just a flicker, and then she smiled too wide. Oh, must be a typo, she said, and walked away fast. But that night, there it was. Tent 6. Set up away from the others, just past the edge of the main clearing. Half in the trees. Dusty. Weather warped. Like no one had touched it in years. But it was standing. And inside were 3 cots. All made up, as if someone was expected. I didn't sleep much that first night. I lay in the cot farthest from the entrance, staring at the canvas walls while the forest whispered around me. The other 2 cots remained empty. I kept telling myself it was fine. Just a glitch in scheduling. Then I noticed something weird. The zipper to the tent's entrance, it never stayed shut. No matter how many times I closed it, I'd wake up and find it halfway open. At first, I blamed wind. But there was no breeze that night, no rustling trees, just silence. On the second night, I woke up around 3 a.m. The tent was cold, too cold, and the zipper was wide open. I sat up slowly. From my cot, I could see out into the trees. A figure stood about 10 feet away, still facing the tent, not moving. My first thought was, counselor checking in. But the figure was wrong. It was too tall, too narrow, no flashlight, no reflective gear, and it made no sound. Then it crouched, bent at the knees, smooth, like a puppet folding without strings, and crawled forward. I scrambled out of bed and zipped the tent shut in one pull, but it didn't matter. Seconds later, something pressed against the wall of the tent from the outside. A palm, then a face, not human. Too long. The eyes were hollow, the skin stretched like wet paper, and it was smiling. It whispered something I couldn't make out. Then it backed away and vanished into the trees. The next morning, I ran to the head counselor. I told him everything. He smiled like I was joking and said, "That's just tent 6. She likes to play." "She?" I asked. His smile dropped. Then he walked away. No one else mentioned tent 6 again. But the third night, the cots weren't empty anymore. 2 other campers had been assigned to it, and both of them had the same dream that night. They described a woman with no face, standing over their beds, humming and brushing their hair with fingers too long and too cold. We didn't sleep the rest of the week, but we stayed, because leaving the tent at night felt worse. The counselors decided to wrap up the week with the traditional night trail, a short walk through the woods in pairs, lit by lanterns and marked by ropes between trees. It was supposed to be fun, harmless, a rite of passage before our last campfire. We all laughed about it, even though none of us had slept well. The 2 guys sharing tent 6 with me, Dario and Malik, they tried to joke, said we'd get lost on purpose and ditch back to the tent early to scare the others. I forced a laugh, but I couldn't stop thinking about the humming. That sound had followed me into the day, into my head. When it was our turn to walk the trail, we held onto the rope and followed the flickering lanterns hung every 20 feet. That was when things got strange. Halfway through, we noticed there were no more lanterns. The rope suddenly turned sharply left, not where we were told the trail would go. We hesitated. But then we heard voices ahead, laughing. Familiar. So we followed. The rope led us deeper into the woods, where the trees grew tighter, the air colder. And then, the rope ended. Cut clean. Ahead of us, the outline of a tent. Tent 6. Impossible. We were nowhere near camp. But there it was, standing in the middle of a small clearing, alone. Its flap was open. Inside, a faint blue glow pulsed, like moonlight underwater. Dario whispered, "This isn't real." Then Malik stepped forward. "I think we're dreaming," and stepped inside. He didn't scream. He didn't come back out. Just silence. I grabbed Dario and ran, but the trees had shifted. We were surrounded. Then, from behind us, the sound of humming. A low, slow tune, off-key and ancient. We turned. She was standing in the trees, her figure barely human. Skin bluish-gray, stretched like fabric too thin over bones, her limbs too long. Her mouth was on the side of her face. She tilted her head, raised one hand, and pointed to the tent. Then the woods went black. I woke up in the infirmary the next morning. My throat was raw, and my hands were covered in scratches. Dario was in the bed next to me, silent, eyes open, but not blinking. They said we were found running toward the lake, screaming about the woman with no mouth. They never found Malik. The camp said he ran away. His family put up posters, flyers, News vans came for a week. Then it stopped. The official story? He got lost and the woods swallowed him. But I know better. Because when I finally went back to school, I found something in my locker the first day. Taped inside the door, a picture, a Polaroid. It showed a tent in the woods, our tent 6, taken from behind some trees. In the doorway stood Malik, but his face was wrong. His eyes were hollow, his mouth was stitched shut. And in the corner of the photo, written in red ink, 3 cots, 1 still empty. I never went back to camp. I never slept in a tent again. And sometimes, when I'm too tired to fight off sleep, I hear humming just outside my window, off key. Pacient, getting closer. There's an old saying passed between the older campers at Pine Hollow Scout Camp. If you hear whistling in the trees, don't whistle back. It sounds like a joke, like one of those dumb campfire tales meant to scare kids into staying in their bunks. I thought so too. That was before the summer of 2021, the last summer I ever went to camp. Pine Hollow was surrounded by dense pine forests that stretched for miles in every direction. Tall, old-growth trees that swayed and creaked even when the air was dead still. The main campsite sat in a clearing beside a small lake, with bunks arranged in a semicircle around the flagpole. No cabins, just canvas tents on wooden platforms, open to the wind and wildlife. Our troop had a tradition. The last week of July was for leadership training. Basically, we were grouped into pairs and tasked with surviving one night alone at Pine Point, a remote off-grid part of the forest 2 miles away. No phones, no flashlights after midnight, and no leaving your tent until sunrise. The counselors called it a rite of passage. Most of us just called it stupid. But I went, paired with a guy named Eli. We didn't know each other well. I was from Troop 114 in Portland. He was from 92 in Tacoma. Quiet kid, kept to himself, but polite. We set up our tent early and got everything squared away before dusk. At first, it was just peaceful. Crickets, distant frogs, the occasional rustle in the woods. Then, right around 11:30 p.m., we heard it, a whistle, low, soft, like someone blowing through cupped hands. It came from the trees, maybe 50 feet to the east. We froze. "Counselor?" Eli called. No response. Then another whistle, same pitch but now, from the other side. It was answering itself. Eli leaned close to me, whispering, "Don't whistle back. Don't ever whistle back." He sounded terrified. I thought it was a joke. But that fear in his voice, that was real. And it was just the beginning. I couldn't sleep after that. Eli sat with his knees pulled up to his chest, head pressed against the canvas, listening. The whistling continued every few minutes, always from a new direction, like someone slowly circling our tent. I whispered, "It's just someone messing with us." But Eli shook his head. "It's not someone." That's when he told me the story. Years ago, at another scout camp in the same region, a boy had gone missing during a solo leadership night. They found his tent undisturbed, sleeping bags still inside. But he was gone, no signs of struggle, no footprints, nothing. The only thing left behind was a whistle. The counselors told everyone he'd run away, but the older scouts whispered another version, that the boy had heard someone whistling in the woods, and he'd whistled back. "Whatever it is," Eli said, "it mimics, but it's not human. And once it knows you heard it, it wants in." I stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Then the zipper on our tent began to move. It wasn't slow. It wasn't sneaky. It just unzipped smooth, fluid, steady. We both scrambled back, pressed against the far wall of the tent. But when it opened, no one was there. Nothing, just the black line of trees. And then the whistle again. This time, just a few feet away. But not from outside, from behind our tent. The whistle was right up against the canvas, followed by the faintest pressure, something dragging a finger along the back wall. We didn't move. We didn't breathe. We just waited. Eventually, the sound faded. Then, silence. Somehow, we made it to morning. But the woods never went back to normal. The birds didn't sing. The breeze didn't return. And Eli? He was pale, shaking. He said we weren't safe anymore. We'd heard it. And it knew. Eli wanted to leave the next night. He said we should pack up after dinner and hike back toward the main camp before dark. Break the rules, get caught, deal with it. Anything was better than staying in Pine Point again. But just before sunset, a counselor showed up at our site. Not one we knew. He was tall, mid-30s maybe, with a green scout uniform that looked outdated like something from decades ago. His name tag was faded. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He didn't say much, just that he'd been sent to check in. Said there'd been too much noise reported from our direction. Then he pulled out a silver whistle, held it up between two fingers. You boys didn't hear anything strange last night, did you? Neither of us answered. The man squinted at us. His smile faded. Then, without a word, he turned and walked into the woods. No flashlight, no map, just vanished into the trees. We didn't wait. We grabbed our gear and left. Ran, more like. But the trail didn't look the same. The trees were too close together. The markers were wrong. We'd walked this path yesterday. We should have been near the main trailhead in 20 minutes. It had been over an hour. That's when we heard it again. The whistle. This time, from ahead of us, then behind, then to the left. Dozens of them, all around. It was like the woods were alive with sound but no wind, no birds. Just those cold, hollow whistles echoing off the pines. Eli grabbed my arm and pointed up ahead, through the trees. The same counselor was standing on the path, only this time he wasn't alone. Behind him, half shrouded in the forest, were shapes. Too tall, too thin, all wearing old, moldy scout uniforms. Their faces didn't look right, stretched, gray, like masks pulled too tight. Each of them had a whistle, and they were all watching us. We didn't move. We didn't breathe. Then, one of them raised the whistle to their mouth and blew. I don't remember how we got out. 1 second, they were there, the pale figures, the whistles, the eyes. The next, I was waking up on the camp's front porch with Eli beside me, shivering under a wool blanket. A counselor we actually recognized was asking us what happened. We didn't answer. What could we say? We just pointed back toward Pine Point. A search team was sent the next morning. They found our tent still standing, sleeping bags unrolled, our packs untouched, like we'd never left. But the woods around it had changed. Trees snapped, scratch marks on the trunks, the faint, sour smell of wet metal in the air. They told us we had a bad night. Said maybe it was stress, hallucination, dehydration. None of that explained the silver whistle Eli had in his hand. He didn't remember picking it up. Neither did I. But he kept it for some reason, wouldn't let it go. Until the night he vanished. 2 weeks later, Eli's mom called me crying. He'd gone camping with his dad near Mount Rainier and wandered off in the middle of the night. They never found him. But his dad said he heard something before Eli disappeared. A whistle, soft, familiar, from deep in the trees. I still hear it sometimes too, late at night, always outside my window. Not a tune, not a song, just one long drawn-out note, like it's waiting for me to answer